what is a digital twin? Well, let me give you a little bit of a definition. See, this kind of looks a little bit like an architectural diagram, but it's actually SimCity. So if you think about SimCity and way that we do gaming, gaming is almost creating a virtual world. While it's not specifically the same, it is almost a manifestation of a digital twin. I have a couple of kids. My son loves to go through and play Minecraft. He's creating his own digital world. So we have so many tools and technologies available to create this digital world, but where does a digital twin come into play? Well, a digital twin is very similar to like a gaming environment in SimCity, but instead of being boxy drawings and kitchens, it's actually a real world model of the actual physical world. So it's down to the specific placement of pieces of equipment, or even what exists today, and then ways that we can manipulate that to go through and define and figure out what else exists and what could happen to that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the ways that digital twins are used and some of the use cases around it as we move forward today. So if you look at it, one of the things that always came apart is, well, what's the difference between, say, a digital twin and an aircraft simulation? So a simulator, I have one of my senior partners here. He basically used to work in the aircraft industry, and I said, you know, we did simulators for aircraft way back in the 70s and 80s. Well, how is that different? And by the way, that was 1970 and 1980, going back on the other century there. But if you look at it, what else can we do right now, and how does it differentiate from an aircraft? So if you think about it, we go in, we put a pilot into a simulation environment to go and teach him how to fly a plane. It's a simulator. You can go through and simulate certain events, but we also went through and put planes into air tunnels, and we're putting specific parts into it. So if you look at something like a drone, we put it into an air tunnel. We can simulate how air flows on the airfoils to go through and figure out whether it's going up and down and how it's actually moving. Well, that's a simulator. But is it close to being it? Well, we always kind of looked at it and said, what is the difference between what we used to do or what we still have available in the way of a simulation versus what a digital twin is? And the way I kind of like to describe it is a simulator is more of a static model of what's going on. It's not dynamic. Whereas a digital twin is more of a dynamic environment of what's going on. So when we think about it, think of going through and putting your plane, and instead of just being in a controlled environment in an air tunnel, you're now going to go through and have it interacting with 2, 3, 4, or 15 additional planes. It's going to be basically dealing with lightning strikes and all those other things in a simulated environment, but we're able to go through and have what we call different kinds of agents and bots interacting with that environment, with that piece of equipment in that environment. That's part of what the digital twin is. So let's kind of look at it. Let's give you a little kind of example of one when I think about it from a building perspective. So we basically, if you're coming from a building world, you might be using a tool called Revit from Autodesk. It provides you with a mechanism to do what's in this diagram of somewhat of a 3D model of the actual building. Then, as we start expanding it, well, what happens if I wanted to go through and add in additional tanking systems? What if I'm going to plug it in with additional environments around that? That's what the digital twin is. It's the ability to take a physical design and a physical model of the systems that are there today. That's what the digital twin part of, and then be able to go through and put different sorts of agents around and work on agent-based modeling to go through and simulate with that 3D model. And then what I like to describe it as, we're starting to move towards a 4D simulation.